The morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient ruins on New Seoul. Jiwon Park wiped sweat from his forehead as he carefully brushed dirt away from a crystal fragment buried in the alien stone. He had been digging here for 3 months, and each day brought new mysteries. "Found another one," called Nari Kim from across the excavation site. She held up a glowing blue crystal, no bigger than her thumb. The linguist had already found 12 similar fragments, each one covered in strange writing that seemed to shift and change when she looked at it directly. Tai-Ho Lee looked up from his own dig site. As the team's archaeologist, he had seen plenty of alien ruins before. But these were different. The stonework was too perfect, too smooth. No tool marks anywhere. It was as if the entire structure had been grown rather than built. "This place gives me the creeps," Tai-Ho muttered, carefully placing his own crystal fragment into a protective case. "I've never seen construction like this, and those symbols, they're not like anything in our databases." Jiwon nodded as he stood up, his knees protesting after hours of careful digging. The research team leader had requested this assignment specifically because the ruins were so unusual. Satellite scans showed similar structures on 17 different worlds, all of them in a perfect spiral pattern radiating out from the galactic center. "Let's head back to the lab," he said. "Nari, can you run these new fragments through the translation matrix?" The 3 researchers walked back to their small outpost, a collection of prefabricated buildings surrounded by the tall grass of New Seoul's endless plains. The colony world was peaceful, home to only 50,000 people who came here to farm or study. It was exactly the kind of quiet place where important discoveries happened by accident. In the lab, Nari connected the crystal fragments to their computer system. The strange writing began to glow brighter as the translation software tried to make sense of the alien languages. She had already identified fragments of text in over 30 different scripts, most of them from civilizations that had been extinct for thousands of years. "It's working," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the screen. "The computer is finding patterns. Wait, this is strange. All these different languages, but they're all saying the same thing." Jiwon and Tai-Ho gathered around her workstation as words began to appear on the screen. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear enough to make them all uncomfortable. "Warning to all who find this place," Nari read aloud. "The Terrans sleep in the 3rd spiral arm. Do not wake them. Do not seek them. Do not anger them. This message is left by the Kethmore Collective in the final year of our civilization." "Terrans?" Tai-Ho asked. "That's what some aliens call humans, isn't it?" Jiwon nodded slowly. "Keep reading, Nari." The linguist's voice became quieter as she continued. "We thought them weak. They had no natural weapons, no telepathy, no energy manipulation abilities. Their technology was primitive. Their world was divided into countless small nations that fought among themselves. We believed conquest would be simple." The lab fell silent except for the hum of computers. Nari's hands shook slightly as she read the next part. "We were wrong. The humans united against us as no species has ever united before. They fought with a creativity and viciousness that defied all predictions. They turned our own weapons against us. They showed no mercy to those who threatened their home world. In 6 months, our empire of 10,000 years was ash. Let this be a warning. The 3rd spiral arm belongs to humanity. Approach at your extinction." Jiwon felt a chill run down his spine. "How old is this?" Nari checked the dating analysis. "The crystal formation suggests at least 15,000 years. maybe older. That's impossible, Taiho said. 15,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves and hunting with stone tools. We didn't even have agriculture yet, let alone spaceflight. But the computer was finding more fragments with similar warnings. The Veltar dynasty, the Jeknol Empire, the Infinite Dominion. All extinct civilizations, all leaving the same terrified message about humanity. Meanwhile, in the distant Helix sector, Supreme Commander Vex Thul of the Vorthak Empire stood before a similar collection of ruins. His warrior's pride was offended by the cowering messages left by extinct species. The Vorthak had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. They were the apex predators of known space. Supreme Commander, his aide reported, we have found similar warning sites on 47 worlds, all telling us to avoid the third spiral arm. Vex Thul's 4 arms crossed in dismissal. The Vorthak were 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, and possessed strength that could crush most other species with ease. They had ruled their empire for 3,000 years through superior force and cunning. Propaganda from the weak, he declared. These extinct species want to frighten us away from rich hunting grounds. I have studied the humans. They are fragmented, primitive and soft. Their worlds are wealthy but poorly defended. Back on New Seoul, Freight Captain Minho Choi was having trouble sleeping. His cargo ship was docked at the colony's small spaceport, loaded with farming equipment and supplies for the outer colonies. But something had been bothering him for weeks. Sunmi, he called to his cargo handler. Come look at these shipping reports. Sunmi Ryu floated over in the zero-gravity cargo bay, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. She had been working freight runs for 10 years and knew how to spot unusual patterns in shipping data. See these military cargo manifests? Minho pointed at his screen. 3 times the normal amount of agricultural equipment being shipped to border colonies. And look at the weight distributions. That's not farming gear. Sunmi studied the data carefully. You think someone's militarizing the border? Maybe. But who? And why? Minho pulled up another report. Also, we've been picking up weird radio chatter from the neutral zone. The ship's computer translated some of it. Listen to this. He played an audio file that sounded like static mixed with alien voices. The computer's translation appeared as text. The sleeping giant stirs. The third spiral arm mistake approaches. All fleets maintain distance from Terran space. Sunmi felt her stomach drop. Sleeping giant? That sounds like someone's planning something stupid, Minho finished. Something very, very stupid. On the Vorthak command ship, Supreme Commander Vex Thul made his decision. The third spiral arm contained dozens of wealthy human worlds, defended only by small police forces and outdated patrol ships. His scouts reported that Earth itself had minimal orbital defenses and no unified military command. Prepare the invasion. Fleet, he ordered. 200 ships should be more than sufficient. We begin with their home world. Once Earth falls, the rest will surrender without resistance. His aide hesitated. Supreme Commander, what about the warnings? Vex Thul's laugh was like grinding stone. What warnings? The desperate lies of extinct cowards? The humans are weak, divided, and ripe for conquest. In 1 month, the third spiral arm will belong to the Vorthak Empire. On New Seoul, Ji-won Park was still staring at the translated warnings when his communication device chimed. It was a message from Earth Defense Command, marked with the highest priority level he had ever seen. All research teams in border sectors returned to designated. Safe zones immediately. Alien military buildup detected in neutral space. This is not a drill. Jiwan looked at his team, then back at the crystal fragments still glowing softly on their workbench. 15,000 years of warnings from dead civilizations. All saying the same thing. Don't mess with the humans. But someone was about to try. The Vorthak fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm cloud, blotting out the stars. 200 massive warships, each one kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could turn cities into glass. They moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting no light as they approached humanity's home world. On Earth, the morning shift at Global Defense Network headquarters was just beginning when the sensors picked up the alien fleet. Yuna. Bay was pouring her second cup of coffee when every alarm in the building started screaming at once. "Contact!" shouted the sensor operator. 200 ships, unknown design, approaching from deep space. They're not responding to our hails. Yuna dropped her coffee mug and ran to her station. As communications officer, it was her job to try to establish contact with any alien visitors, but these ships were broadcasting nothing except targeting data. "They're locking weapons on our orbital platforms," she reported, her voice staying steady despite the fear in her chest. "All civilian traffic, clear the space lanes immediately. Military units, battle stations." Above the planet, Earth's modest defense grid came online. 50 orbital weapon platforms, 3 dozen patrol ships, and 2 aging cruisers that had been built for exploring distant stars, not fighting wars. Against 200 alien dreadnoughts, it looked like a joke. The first Vorthak bombardment began at exactly noon, Earth Standard Time. Beams of superheated plasma rained down from orbit, turning entire city blocks into molten craters. In Seoul, where Yuna's parents lived in a small apartment near the old university, the attack lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, nothing remained but cooling glass and twisted metal. Yuna watched the destruction feeds on her screen and felt something cold settle in her chest. Not just fear, but something harder. Something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. At the United Nations building in New York, diplomat Jin Woo's son was already on the emergency line with world leaders when the first plasma beams hit. The building shook as Manhattan's skyline erupted in flames around them. "We need to respond," he said into his headset, smoke visible through the windows behind him. "But we need to buy time first." The Secretary General's voice crackled through the communication system. "What are you thinking?" "I'm going to try to talk to them," Jin Woo said. "Even if they're hostile, they might be willing to negotiate. Most species prefer conquest to genocide. There's no profit in ruling over ashes." Jin Woo broadcast on all frequencies, using every first contact protocol that had been developed over the past century. He spoke in clear, simple language, offering to discuss terms of surrender if the aliens would stop the bombardment. The Vorthak response came 12 minutes later. Supreme Commander Vexthul's image appeared on screens across the planet. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. "Humans of Earth," he said in accented but understandable English. "I am Supreme Commander Vexthul of the Vorthak Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will submit completely or you will die. You have 48 Earth hours to surrender your weapons and prepare for occupation." The transmission ended with scenes of Vorthak ground forces landing in several major cities. The aliens were massive armored creatures that moved with frightening speed. Their weapons vaporized everything they touched. 48 hours, Jin Woo repeated to his staff. We need to evacuate the civilian populations and prepare for the worst. But in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Hayok Nam was having a very different reaction to the alien ultimatum. The mild-mannered logistics coordinator was reading casualty reports from the initial bombardment when his secure phone rang. "Colonel Nam?" said the voice on the other end. "You are activated. Authorization code, Sleeping Giant." Hayok closed his eyes for a moment. He had hoped this day would never come. For 15 years, he had lived a quiet life coordinating supply, shipments for peaceful colonies. But before that, he had been something else entirely. "Understood, Control," he said. "Beginning Phase 1 implementation." Across human space, hundreds of people received similar phone calls. Freight captains like Mino Choi discovered that their cargo ships had military-grade engines and hidden weapon systems. Research scientists found that their deep space laboratories were actually heavily armed military bases. Even some of the farming colonies had concealed defense networks. Humanity had been preparing for this day for decades, ever since the first alien ruins were discovered. The warnings left by extinct civilizations had been taken very seriously by Earth's governments. They had prepared for war while hoping it would never come. On New Seoul, Ji-won Park and his team were packing their research when they received new orders. Instead of evacuating, they were told to keep digging. The crystal fragments they had found were suddenly the most important archaeological discovery in human history. "I don't understand," Nari said as she carefully loaded the translated warnings into a secure data case. "Why do they want us to stay here during a war?" Taiho was studying a new fragment they had uncovered that morning. This one was different from the others. Instead of warnings, it seemed to contain technical information, star charts, energy signatures, something that looked like weapons specifications. "Because these aren't just warnings," he said slowly. "They're instructions. The extinct civilizations weren't just telling future species to avoid humans. They were telling them how humans fight." Ji-won activated his secure communication link. "Earth Command, this is New Seoul Research Team Alpha. We have found technical data on human military capabilities from 15,000 years ago. The aliens who left these warnings, they studied us. They knew our tactics." The response came back immediately. "Continue excavation. Maximum priority. Download all data to the military network immediately." In Earth orbit, Captain Dae-hyun Ko received his activation codes while his ship was pretending to be a civilian research vessel. The UNS Discovery had been exploring distant star systems for 3 years, collecting samples and mapping new worlds. Now it dropped its peaceful disguise. Hidden weapon ports opened along the ship's hull. The research equipment reconfigured itself into military sensors and targeting systems. The crew of 50 scientists and engineers revealed themselves as highly trained naval officers. "All stations report ready for combat," his executive officer reported. "Plasma cannons online, missile tubes loaded, defensive systems active." Dae-hyun opened a channel to Earth Command. "Control, this is Warbird 1. We are go for Phase 2. Similar messages were being transmitted from ships throughout human space. The civilian fleet was transforming into something the Vorthak had never seen before. Not a formal military in the alien sense, but a distributed network of hidden weapons and trained personnel that could strike from anywhere. Supreme Commander Vex Thul was reviewing the occupation plans when his intelligence officer brought him disturbing news. "Commander, we are detecting unusual activity throughout human space. Energy signatures that do not match our intelligence reports." Ships that were registered as civilian are now broadcasting military transponders. Vex Thul studied the reports with growing confusion. According to his scouts, humans had no unified military force. Their worlds were defended by local police and small patrol fleets. Now his sensors were showing hundreds of armed ships appearing from seemingly empty space. "Impossible," he declared. "Humans are weak and divided. They could not have hidden a fleet of this size." But the energy readings were unmistakable. Fusion reactors coming online, weapon systems powering up, ship after ship revealing itself as the 48-hour deadline approached. On Earth, Una Bay was coordinating the evacuation of major population centers when she received word that her parents had been killed in the Sol bombardment. She stared at the casualty report for a long moment, then deleted it and continued working. There would be time to grieve later. Right now, she had a job to do. "All civilian transports clear the orbital zone," she broadcast. "Military units, prepare for Phase 3 implementation." Jinwoo-san made one final attempt at negotiation, broadcasting directly to the Vorthak command ship. "Supreme Commander, we are prepared to discuss terms, but the bombardment of civilian targets must stop immediately." Vex Thul's response was swift and brutal. "Humans do not negotiate from positions of weakness. You have 12 hours remaining to surrender unconditionally." That was the moment when humanity's patience ran out. In bunkers around the world, military commanders who had been pretending to be civilians for decades began issuing orders that had been planned for years. Phase 3 was beginning. "This is Terra Command to all human units," came the broadcast on encrypted channels. "The gloves are off. Repeat, the gloves are off. Begin sleeping giant protocols immediately." The war that the Vorthak thought would last days was about to become something very different. Something that would remind the galaxy why ancient civilizations had left warnings in crystal and stone. The humans were awake. So-min Jung had been studying deep-sea creatures off the coast of Korea when the war started. As a marine biologist, she was used to working in extreme environments and solving problems with limited resources. She never expected those skills would make her valuable as a combat engineer. Now she floated in the zero gravity of Luna Base 7, watching Vorthak ships approach Earth's moon through her helmet display. What the aliens thought was a simple mining facility was actually one of humanity's most heavily fortified military installations. "Remember," she told her team through the comm system, "their ships are designed to intimidate primitive species. Big, impressive, lots of energy weapons, but they're not built for close combat." The Luna bases had been disguised as mining operations for 30 years. Under the rocky surface, massive rail guns waited in hidden silos. The mining tunnels were actually launch tubes for nuclear missiles, and the atmospheric processors could generate interference fields that would blind enemy sensors. Salmon activated the first surprise. "Luna Base 7 to all stations. Initiating Protocol Hammer." The moon's surface erupted as dozens of hidden weapons revealed themselves. Railgun projectiles, moving at significant fractions of light speed, began tearing through the Vorthak formation. The aliens had expected orbital bombardment platforms and maybe some missile batteries. They had not expected the moon itself to be a weapon. "Direct hits on 12 enemy vessels," reported the targeting officer. "They're trying to pull back to long range," but pulling back was exactly what the humans wanted them to do. Solman activated the second part of her plan. "All fast attack units, begin harassment runs, make them think we're desperate." Small human ships began darting in and out of the Vorthak formation, firing missiles and retreating before the aliens could respond effectively. The Vorthak returned fire with their massive energy weapons, scoring several kills, but the attacks kept coming. What the Vorthak couldn't see was that the small ship attacks were coordinated by 3 different human factions. Young-Ho An commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from a bunker in the Rocky Mountains. Minji Quan was coordinating the Luna Base attacks from her command center under the moon's surface. Seonghwa Park led the colonial fleet from a hidden base in the asteroid belt. All 3 commanders were following the same tactical doctrine, but adapting it to their specific situations. The Vorthak had conquered dozens of species, but they had always faced unified command structures. They couldn't understand how humans could coordinate so effectively while maintaining independent chains of command. "Enemy formation is breaking. Up," reported Minji from Luna Base Command. "They're trying to engage our different groups separately." "Perfect," replied Young-Ho from Earth. "Phase 4 is a go. Begin chaos protocols." What happened next had never been seen in galactic warfare before. The human ships stopped following predictable attack patterns and began behaving in ways that the Vorthak computers couldn't analyze. Captain Daehyun Ko led the first truly insane maneuver. His ship, still disguised as a research vessel, broadcast a civilian distress call while flying directly at a Vorthak dreadnought. The aliens, following standard conquest protocols, prepared to capture what they thought was a fleeing civilian ship. Instead, Daehyun rammed his ship into the dreadnought's sensor array while ejecting a spread of nuclear mines. The explosion blinded the alien ship and left it vulnerable to follow-up attacks from hidden human warships. "Confirmed kill on enemy flagship," he reported as his crew evacuated to backup positions. "Hull breach initiated, reactor containment failing." The Vorthak had rules for space combat. They used their superior technology and numbers to overwhelm enemy forces through conventional tactics. Humans were ignoring all the rules. Yuna Shin was analyzing the battle from Intelligence Command when she realized why the human tactics were so effective. The Vorthak had spent 3,000 years conquering species that fought according to galactic military conventions. Honor duels between champions, formal challenges and accepted surrender procedures, battles that followed predictable patterns. Humans had no such conventions. They had learned warfare from fighting each other for thousands of years, developing tactics that were designed to win at any cost. "Command," she reported, "the enemy ships are having computer malfunctions. Their tactical systems can't predict our next moves because we're not following any established patterns." Dongmin Yu, the former game developer turned military strategist, was implementing ideas that he had originally designed for entertainment. Swarm tactics borrowed from strategy games, psychological warfare based on horror movie plots, even economic pressure techniques from business simulations. "Try this," he suggested to the fleet commanders. "Instead of attacking their ships, let's steal them." The next human attack wave consisted of boarding parties that cut through Vorthak hulls with industrial mining equipment. The aliens had energy shields designed to stop weapons, but mining lasers weren't classified as weapons by their computers. The humans got inside their ships and began turning Vorthak vessels against each other. On Mars, Haeun-Oh was facing the worst situation of any human commander. 3 Vorthak battle groups were approaching the planet, and her defensive fleet was outnumbered 10 to 1. According to every military manual ever written, she should either surrender or retreat. Instead, she did something so dangerous that her own officers tried to stop her. "Commander," her aide protested, "if you detonate the fusion reactor, the radiation will kill everyone on the planet." "Not everyone," Haeun replied calmly. "The underground cities have full radiation shielding, and the colonists knew this was a possibility when they volunteered to live here." She gave the order that changed everything. The main fusion reactor that powered Mars' colony didn't just shut down, it exploded in a controlled detonation that created an artificial solar flare. The radiation burst blinded every sensor in the Martian system and disrupted all communication. But the humans had planned for this. Their ships switched to backup navigation systems and continued fighting in the radioactive darkness. The Vorthak, dependent on their advanced sensors, were effectively blind. Human ships closed to point-blank range and began firing everything they had. Kinetic weapons that couldn't be stopped by energy shields. Nuclear missiles with manual guidance systems. Even old-fashioned chemical explosives deployed by boarding parties. The Vorthak battle groups were destroyed in 12 minutes. Supreme Commander Vex Thul received the reports from Mars with growing horror. His forces had lost 37 ships to an enemy that should have been helpless, and the human tactics made no sense to his strategic computers. "They fight without honor," complained his tactical officer. "They use their own people as weapons. They destroy their own infrastructure to deny it to us." "They fight to win," Vex Thul corrected grimly, "and they are very good at it." More reports came in from across human space. Vorthak fleets were being ambushed by ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields for decades. Supply convoys were being attacked by vessels disguised as civilian freighters. Even the humans' diplomatic communications were psychological warfare designed to demoralize Vorthak crews. The worst report came from the intelligence division. Human ships were broadcasting captured Vorthak military communications, but with small changes that made the orders contradictory or impossible to follow. Entire Vorthak formations were becoming confused and attacking each other. "How are they doing this?" Vex Thul demanded. His intelligence chief studied the data with 4 eyes wide with fear. "They appear to be adapting faster than we can respond. Every time we develop a countermeasure, they change tactics. It's as if they're treating this as a learning exercise." That was exactly what the humans were doing. Unlike the rigid military hierarchies that most galactic species used, human forces were encouraged to experiment and adapt. Every engagement provided data that was immediately shared across the entire fleet. When the Vorthak adapted their shields, to stop kinetic weapons, humans switched to energy weapons. When energy weapons were countered, humans began using gravity manipulation. When that was blocked, they started using the Vorthak's own technology against them. The battle for Earth's system lasted 6 days. When it was over, the Vorthak invasion fleet had been reduced from 200 ships to fewer than 50. The survivors were retreating toward their home territory, broadcasting desperate warnings to stay away from human space. But the humans weren't done. As the alien fleet fled, human ships began following them, not pursuing in the traditional sense, but shadowing them back to Vorthak territory. Supreme Commander Vex Thul realized too late what the ancient warnings had really meant. The extinct civilizations hadn't been warning about human technology or individual strength. They had been warning about what humans became when their survival was threatened. A species that would turn their own planet's moon into a weapon. A people who would detonate nuclear reactors rather than allow enemy occupation. Creatures who treated warfare not as a formal contest between civilizations, but as a puzzle to be solved by any means necessary. The Vorthak Empire had ruled through fear for 3,000 years, but they had never faced anything like humanity's response to existential threat. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was very, very angry. The Vorthak survivors expected the humans to celebrate their victory and rebuild their damaged worlds. That's what civilized species did after repelling an invasion. They mourned their dead, repaired their cities, and returned to peaceful pursuits. The Humans did something else entirely. Admiral Wanho Lim stood in the command center of humanity's first deep space warfare vessel, watching the retreating Vorthak fleet on his tactical display. The ship had been built in secret over the past decade, disguised as a civilian deep space research project. Now it was leading a fleet of similar vessels into unknown territory. "Contact all ships," he ordered. "We are not pursuing the enemy. We are hunting them." The distinction was important. Pursuit meant chasing a defeated enemy back to their territory and maybe conducting a few raids to ensure they didn't return. Hunting meant something much more systematic and permanent. Ahra. Choi led the reconnaissance team that would gather intelligence on Vorthak space. Her team included Kyung-Hwan Lee, a former asteroid miner who knew how to operate in harsh environments, and Bora Kim, a computer specialist who could hack alien systems. "Initial survey complete," Ara reported from the scout ship's bridge. "The Vorthak Empire consists of 17 core worlds, 347 colonies, and approximately 2,000 tributary systems. Total population estimated at 500 billion sentients across 43 different species." Admiral Wanho studied the data with professional interest. Most military commanders would see those numbers and recommend a negotiated settlement. 500 billion beings was a lot of potential casualties, and attacking an empire that size would require resources humanity didn't have. But humans didn't think like most species. They saw the Vorthak Empire's size as a tactical advantage, not a problem. "Begin Phase 5, Admiral Wanho ordered. "Infrastructure targeting. We're not going after their military. We're going after everything that makes their empire work." The horror began with what the Vorthak initially thought were random pirate attacks. Human ships appeared at FTL relay stations and cargo depots, destroyed the facilities, and vanished back into deep space. At first, the attacks seemed scattered and pointless. Chan Wuhan was leading the engineering teams that specialized in sabotage operations. His background was in civilian construction, which made him perfect for destroying alien infrastructure. He knew exactly which components were critical and which were redundant. "Target the relay nodes first," he instructed his teams. "Without FTL communication, they can't coordinate their response. Then hit the automated cargo systems. Make them dependent on manual shipping." Within 2 months, the Vorthak Empire's communication network was in ruins. Worlds that had been connected by instantaneous FTL messaging were now isolated, dependent on physical courier ships that took weeks to deliver information. Yeonjin Park coordinated the cyber warfare campaign from a mobile command ship that jumped randomly through Vorthak space. Her specialty was turning alien technology against itself, and the Vorthak's dependence on artificial intelligence made them vulnerable to her attacks. "Their entire economic system runs on automated trading algorithms," she explained to Admiral Wanho during a strategy briefing. "If we can introduce random errors into the calculations, their markets will collapse without us firing a single shot." The cyber attacks began subtly. Shipping schedules became unreliable. Manufacturing quotas were miscalculated. Trade agreements were automatically canceled due to computer glitches. The Vorthak Empire's economy, which had run smoothly for centuries, began falling apart. But the most terrifying part of the human campaign was what happened to captured Vorthak. Personnel. Jae-min Ro had been a civilian counselor before the war, helping people work through personal problems and family conflicts. His understanding of psychology made him invaluable for interrogating alien prisoners. "The key is understanding how their minds work," he explained to his intelligence team. The Vorthak have a rigid hierarchical society. They literally cannot function without clear orders from superior officers. Instead of torturing prisoners for information, Jamin simply isolated them from their chain of command and waited. Vorthak soldiers, cut off from their officers and unable to receive orders, began to break down psychologically. They would volunteer information just to have someone tell them what to do. It's not cruelty, Jamin insisted when some human officers expressed concern about his methods. It's just incompatible psychology. They need authority figures to function. We're providing that in exchange for cooperation. The information gathered from cooperative prisoners revealed the true scope of the Vorthak Empire's weaknesses. The tributary species they had conquered were held in line through fear and economic dependence. If the infrastructure that supported that system could be disrupted, entire sectors might rebel. Meanwhile, the galaxy was watching humanity's campaign. With growing alarm, Isil Moon had been appointed as humanity's first galactic ambassador, a job that hadn't existed a year earlier. Now she was fielding desperate communications from civilizations that had existed for millions of years. The hegemony of Blessed Stars offers a non-aggression treaty, she reported to Earth Command. They're willing to provide technological assistance and trade agreements if we promise not to enter their territory. What about the Crystalline Collective? Admiral Wanho asked. They're offering to share their historical archives. Apparently, they have records of the last time someone made humans angry, about 15,000 years ago. They want to make sure we remember that they weren't involved. The offers kept coming. Ancient empires that had never acknowledged humanity's existence were suddenly eager to establish diplomatic relations. Some were offering tribute payments. Others wanted to hire human mercenaries to resolve their own conflicts. On the Vorthak, homeworld, Supreme Commander Vexthul was reading reports that defied all military logic. The humans weren't occupying conquered territory. They weren't demanding surrender or negotiating terms. They were systematically dismantling everything that made the Vorthak Empire function. The humans have taken control of the Cathara system, his aide reported. But instead of establishing a garrison, they're evacuating the civilian population and then destroying all the infrastructure. Why? Vexthul demanded. What's the strategic value of empty systems? The aide hesitated before answering. Intelligence believes they're not trying to conquer our empire, Commander. They're trying to delete it. The human strategy was becoming clear. Rather than occupying Vorthak worlds, they were making them uninhabitable. Rather than enslaving tributary species, they were offering them independence and protection. Rather than fighting the Vorthak military directly, they were making it impossible for that military to function. Vexthul accessed the translation of the final warning that had been discovered on dozens of worlds. The message left by a civilization that had made the same mistake the Vorthak had made. We called ourselves the Infinite Dominion, the ancient text read. We ruled 1,000 systems and commanded the loyalty of 50 species. We thought the humans were just another primitive world to be conquered. We learned that humans don't just fight wars. They solve problems. And they decided that our existence was a problem that needed to be solved permanently. The message continued, with technical details that chilled Vexthul's 4 hearts. The humans had studied the Infinite Dominion Society, identified its critical weaknesses, and then systematically exploited those weaknesses until the entire civilization collapsed. Not through military conquest, but through what the ancient text called comprehensive societal deconstruction. How long did it take? Vexthul asked his aide. According to the records, sir, 18 months. From first contact to complete civilizational collapse. Vexthul looked at his own empire's status reports. Communication networks down. Economic systems failing. Military units cut off from command and control. Tributary species declaring independence, faster than the Vorthak could respond. How long since the humans began their campaign? 6 months, Commander. Vexthul realized that the Vorthak Empire was not at war with humanity. Wars had rules, objectives, and ending conditions. This was something else. This was extermination disguised as strategy. The humans had learned from 15,000 years of warnings left by extinct civilizations. They knew exactly how to dismantle a galactic empire efficiently and permanently, and they were very, very good at it. Seonho Park, now serving as Earth's supreme military commander, addressed the galaxy from his headquarters on Luna. His message was broadcast on all frequencies, translated into every known language. To all civilizations currently observing the situation in Vorthak space, he began, his voice calm and professional. Humanity did not seek this conflict. We are a peaceful species that prefers exploration and trade to warfare. However, when our home world was attacked and our civilians murdered, we were forced to respond. He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. The Vorthak Empire chose to break the oldest rule in the galaxy. They decided to mess with humans. We are now demonstrating why that rule exists and why it has been written in crystalline stone by every civilization that learned it the hard way. The message ended with coordinates for humanitarian aid stations that were being established in former Vorthak territory. 6 months after the Vorthak attack on Earth, Jisoo Lee stood before the Galactic Council for the first time in human history. The ancient chamber on Nexus Prime had witnessed the rise and fall of empires for over 50,000 years, but it had never seen anything quite like humanity's entrance into galactic politics. The council consisted of representatives from the 12 oldest civilizations in the galaxy, species so ancient that some had evolved beyond physical form. They communicated through energy patterns and quantum fluctuations, their thoughts translated by machines that were older than human civilization. "We welcome the humans to the council," spoke the ethereal collective, their words appearing as glowing symbols in the air. "Though we confess uncertainty about your methods." Jisoo had prepared for this moment carefully. She wore a simple dark suit rather than the elaborate robes favored by other ambassadors. Her message was equally straightforward. "Honored council members," she began, "humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all galactic civilizations. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our current space, and no desire to interfere in the internal affairs of other species. Yet the Vorthak Empire no longer exists," observed the Silicon Minds, their mechanical voices harmonizing in perfect coordination. "An empire of 3,000 years' duration was eliminated in less than 1 year. This troubles us." Jisoo nodded calmly. "The Vorthak Empire chose to attack our homeworld and murder our civilians. We responded proportionally." Proportionally? The quantum philosophers manifested as shifting geometric patterns, their confusion evident in the chaotic mathematics of their display. "You eliminated their entire civilization." "We eliminated their ability to threaten other species," Jisoo corrected. "Former Vorthak citizens are being relocated to peaceful worlds with full humanitarian support. We're not genocidal. We're thorough." In the former Vorthak territory, Jihoon Baek was overseeing exactly that kind of humanitarian operation. As head of the Reconstruction Corps, he was coordinating the largest refugee resettlement program in galactic history. "Report," he requested, from his aide as they toured the temporary camps on the world that had once been the Vorthak capital. 400 million refugees processed so far, reported the aide. Medical care, psychological counseling, and job training are all proceeding on schedule. Most of the former tributary species are adapting well to independence. Jehoon watched as human volunteers worked alongside alien refugees, teaching former slaves how to operate the democratic institutions that would govern their new worlds. It was messy, complicated work that would take decades to complete properly. "What about the Vorthak themselves?" he asked. "More difficult," the aide admitted. "Their entire culture was based on dominance and conquest. Many of them are having trouble adapting to peaceful coexistence. But the psychological rehabilitation programs are showing promise." The rehabilitation programs were perhaps the most unsettling aspect of humanity's victory. Rather than simply eliminating their enemies, humans were trying to cure them of the cultural and psychological patterns that had made them aggressive in the first place. On Nexus Prime, Yuna Song was establishing humanity's first embassy in the galactic capital. The building she had chosen was modest by alien standards, but it sent a clear message. Unlike other species, humans weren't trying to impress anyone with their wealth or power. Ambassador Song called out a delegation from the ancient Kethmore Collective as she supervised the installation of security systems. "We bring greetings from our home world." The Kethmore were one of the few species old enough to remember the last time humans had been active in galactic politics. Their leader, speaking through translator Hyun-Soo Go, shared historical records that had been sealed for 15 millennia. "Your people were different then," the Kethmore explained. "More primitive in technology, but equally dangerous in temperament. The last species to challenge humanity was the Devourers of Souls, an empire that consumed entire worlds for sustenance." "What happened to them?" Yuna asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "They no longer exist. Not just their empire, but their entire species. Humanity didn't just defeat them. Humanity made sure they could never threaten anyone ever again." The historical records painted a picture of humanity's earlier period in galactic history. 15,000 years ago, humans had been a young, aggressive species that responded to threats with overwhelming force. The galaxy had learned to leave them alone, and eventually humans had retreated to their home systems to develop in isolation. "Why did they isolate themselves?" Yuna wondered. "According to our records, they were evolving, becoming something different. The humans who fought the Devourers were driven by anger and fear. The humans who defeated the Vorthak fought with cold, calculated precision. You have become more dangerous, not less." Meanwhile, Min-Seok Jang was revolutionizing galactic trade from his office in the commercial district. As humanity's first galactic trade representative, he was discovering that human economic practices were as disruptive as human military tactics. "I don't understand," complained a representative from the Merchant Guild. "You're offering technology transfers and manufacturing partnerships with species that have nothing to offer in return. Where's the profit?" Min-Seok smiled. "Profit isn't just about immediate return on investment. We're building long-term relationships that will benefit everyone involved. When former Vorthak tributary worlds become prosperous, they'll become trading partners and allies." The concept of economic development as a form of diplomacy was revolutionary to most galactic species. They were accustomed to trade relationships based on exploitation and dominance. Humans were offering partnerships that would make everyone wealthier over time. But why? The Merchant Guild representative persisted. What do humans gain from this? Peace, Minsok replied simply. Prosperous, stable worlds don't start wars. They're too busy building things and enjoying life. The most significant discovery came when Gaeyun Cho, the young xenoarchaeologist, uncovered the truth about humanity's origins while studying ruins in the galactic core. Working with data from dozens of ancient sites, she pieced together a story that explained everything. We're not originally from Earth, she reported to the Scientific Council. Humanity is the descendant of refugees from an ancient galactic war. We were placed on Earth as children and allowed to develop in isolation until we were mature enough to rejoin galactic civilization. The evidence was overwhelming. Genetic markers that didn't match Earth's evolutionary history. Technology. Fragments buried in geological layers that predated human civilization by millions of years. And most tellingly, the warnings left by extinct civilizations weren't just warnings about human military capabilities. They were progress reports. The experiment proceeds as planned, read one newly translated fragment. The young humans show promise, but require further development. Recommend continued isolation until they can demonstrate wisdom to match their strength. Taeyon Nam, Earth's first president of galactic affairs, received a message that changed everything. It came from the galactic core, from an AI collective, so old that they claimed to remember the birth of stars. Greetings, children of Terra, the message began. We have watched your progress with great interest. You have grown strong as we hoped. You have learned wisdom as we prayed. The time for isolation has ended. Welcome back to the galactic community. The message included star charts showing humanity's original territory before the ancient war that had scattered them across the galaxy. Worlds that had been waiting empty for 50,000 years, maintained by automated systems for humanity's eventual return. You were not conquerors, the AI collective explained. You were guardians. Your role was to ensure that no species could threaten the peace and stability of galactic civilization. The Vorthak Empire was a test of your readiness. It all made sense now. The warnings left by extinct civilizations weren't threats. They were acknowledgments of humanity's role as the galaxy's immune system. When a species became too aggressive, too dangerous to the peace, humanity would activate and solve the problem. The final message from the AI collective was both a welcome and a commission. The experiment is complete. The children have grown strong and wise. Resume your duties, guardians. The galaxy has need of you. In the months that followed, humanity established its first permanent colony ship, commanded by Siwon Choi and crewed by volunteers from every human nation. As the ship departed for the galactic core, it carried a message that was broadcast on all frequencies. This is Terra Command to all galactic civilizations, came the transmission. Humanity has returned to active galactic service. We remain committed to peaceful coexistence and mutual prosperity. However, let this serve as a reminder. The oldest rule in the galaxy exists for good reason. On Earth, children learned galactic history in schools where teacher Harem Park explained the delicate balance of power that kept the galaxy peaceful. Most species are good neighbors, she told her students. They trade, explore, and build wonderful things. But sometimes a species forgets how to be civilized. When that happens, it's humanity's job to remind them. What if they don't listen? Asked one of the children. Teacher Harem smiled sadly. Then we do what we did to the Vorthak.